Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Madam Web. In no means is Madam Web a good movie. At first, it kind of plays as sort of campy. When I saw it, there were a lot of people in the theater who were ready for it to be a camp B-movie classic. It isn't. It's not that good at being bad, unfortunately. But it's also, I don't know, it's kind of half this is hilarious, half this is boring. Another part of it is just like nobody, its lead sort of doesn't give a shit. The direction isn't really that good. The writing is pretty bad. There's nothing to really take from this that makes it more inspired than just being, another kind of failed superhero kind of spinoff. And I'm sure there's lots of ways you could dress this up, and I know past the Chris Stuckman review where he, actually, we shouldn't be so mean to movies, and after he's made a movie, he's nice to Madam Web or something. I get where people are coming from, because sometimes I work on projects that take forever, and then nobody cares when they come out. Then you realize real quickly they aren't very good. And then, you fart something out in a weekend, and people will remember it forever. It's sort of inspiration and creativity, and the creative process does not equate always something that's good. Should you respect that person as a person? Sure, and be polite to them? Absolutely. And I've met people before who've given negative reviews for it. I'm not yelled at them or something like a crazy person. But at the same time, when something fucking stinks. And although I know this is going to be a punching bag at the Razzies next year or something like that, and unnecessarily because it's so high profile, it's not like a good movie. It's pretty bad. I'd have a hard time believing someone enjoyed this in any capacity. And you can kind of tell when everyone's sort of going through the motions, that the passion is not really on screen, that the passion is not even in its lead, that they don't really, that the villain sounds mainly dubbed, that it is sort of just doing other things superhero movies did before, especially Spider-Man movies. It just feels like both a cut and paste job made by people who don't give a shit, and then you sort of are just stuck with Madam Web. So Madam Web is about Dakota Johnson, who is playing a woman named Cassandra Webb, who is, I'm assuming, related to Mark Webb, the director of the Amazing Spider-Man movies, so I'm assuming she's going to tell him to not make those or maybe she doesn't like him, so she then makes him make those. I'm pretty sure that's the only prequel thing in this movie. It takes place in 2003. Anyway, she's a EMT with this guy named Ben, whose sister is currently pregnant with a kid named Peter. Unrelated. I don't think that has anything to do with anything in any other movies. But her being related to Mark Webb, I think that's what's really going on. But during one of her EMT things, she has a near-death experience. She then can see into the future because she finds out something with the Amazon and her mom with the snakes right before she died and stuff. Or spiders. Sorry, she's not Madam Spider. Although that doesn't sound bad. But she starts having visions that this guy is going to kill all these teenage girls because that guy has visions that the teenage girls will grow up and be spider ladies and then kill him. Which, if you're wondering from the trailers, the only time you see any of them in spider outfits or anyone doing superhero stuff is in one of these visions. So she's using her visions to stop him from stopping his visions. And so she teams up with these teenage girls, played by Sydney Sweeney, Isabella Marquez, and Celeste O'Connor, and brings them together so that they won't get killed and stuff as they're on the run from this guy named Ezekiel, who is Ezekiel Sims, who sounds like he's dubbed the entire movie as he tries to kill these teenagers because they'll eventually kill him someday soon, maybe, and Madam Web is sort of learning her powers and her future-telling stuff as she tries to defeat him from killing these teenage girls who, nothing about this really works, and I think that part of it is because it is so outwardly cynical, and it feels like, it reminds me very much of the comic book movies pre-MCU, the Tobey Maguire first Spider-Man, in that they didn't really respect the medium. They're sort of adapting what they thought was cool. They're making giant assumptions, making huge generalizations, sort of not really caring about the characters, much more interested in making a big Hollywood movie, but not even fully understanding what that was. And it's sort of a kind of watching a bunch of ideas kind of snowball down and sort of crush whatever hopes and dreams you had that this could be a good movie. Madam Web is probably not like that, because who fucking cares about a Madam Web movie? I'm sure there are some fans out there. I've never met them. I would be curious, but I honestly don't think they were. So the little kernel of, I can't believe this is on the big screen, is definitely not there. And Dakota Johnson, who I know did a fun press tour, and I enjoyed that, but very much feels like she does not care about this movie. Like, there's certain people where you can tell they just want to go back to the trailer. It was like she could not hide her not giving a shitness for this movie. It was remarkable, frankly, how little she gave a fuck. Now, the other three girls who she's carrying around with, they're like professional Hollywood actresses. I don't think they were good necessarily, but they have a level of, I guess, professional quality that, like, you almost think that their group is better written than everyone else, and then you forget almost that it's like the same screenplay written by the same people. And you're like, it's not that, it's just like they are actually sort of caring in this movie of, like, a bad guy who sounds like he's dubbed, and a lead who sounds like she's just doing this to, like, you know, keep her prospects up or something. I don't know. Keep another paycheck coming, have another big Hollywood movie. That's the only things I can get from this, what she was doing here. The bad guy does sound like he's dubbed the whole time, and thus it's like there's a level of remove there, as well as like it's not really that good, and you're kind of like just think he's like this crazy guy, even though he's so involved in most of the plot. It kind of doesn't come off as menacing. It just came off as sort of bland B-moviness. I often, when I was watching it, was kind of just wondering, like, what exactly they were going for, because it did feel like sometimes it would go into camp and they sort of realize, like, oh, this stinks, and then other times they'd sort of retreat and try to pretend like they could make like a functional movie. But it's like, wasn't Eyes of Laura Mars basically what you wanted Madam Web to be? And if this had been an Eyes of Laura Mars riff, that sounds great. That is not what this is. It's basically someone awkwardly becoming someone with superpowers, not really wanting to deal with it, which is like, I get when people said Dakota Johnson's playing this so well and stuff, but at the same time, it's like, it really just feels like her I don't really want to be here sort of works with her characters. Oh, I don't really want to be here. But it really more plays like an actor who just doesn't really give a shit. It's funny seeing Adam Scott in this, because I've never seen someone who's prominently on How Did This Get Made be in a pretty bad movie. So I'm curious if he'll be on, if they do this episode, if he'll be on that one. Although he was fine. Most actors are fine. It's just very much like, I get people want to respect this, and there's been so much hype around S.J. Clarkson directing a movie and her TV work, but this is like, I don't really get a sense of who she is as a director. I don't really get a sense of what Sony wants out of these Spider-Man movies. Some of it is like, you know, have a big fight. Spoiler is they fight in front of the Pepsi sign, which I can tell a lot of critics aren't from New York, because they're like, oh, well, because there are Pepsi tie-ins. There are, and I think that was part of it, but the Pepsi sign, I think, is maybe like more of a local landmark than like one people travel to, so I don't think that transcends for people. But I was like, oh, no, I don't want to mess up the Pepsi sign. We love that sign. Come on. Gonna mess that up. So I thought it was trying to be like a Statue of Liberty, like what's a lower level landmark than the Statue of Liberty? The Pepsi sign in Queens. Sure. I mean, I was fine with that, frankly. That is an actual landmark. It's not just Pepsi advertising. Can it be both? Absolutely. But which that so played like just another, and they even do like try to do the Gwen Stacy thing, and it's like, it's very much like a movie, Spider-Man movie conclusion that they had to do to be like, see, this is exciting, like the Spider-Mans. But I don't think they really knew what they wanted from the character and what the future of her was, which is odd because she's, you know, a fortune teller. But it's also like, I think they were just more like, who can we make movies out of these thousands and thousands of characters? And you used to always hear that about Marvel. Oh, well, you have 90,000 characters. That could be 90,000 Star Warses. And you're like, well, that doesn't, I mean, everybody would like 90,000 Star Warses, but I feel like that wouldn't, market-wise, wouldn't work well. And this is like the result of that. It's probably the most inconsequential Marvel character they could bring into this. I didn't see any references to Stan Lee's wife, which was unfortunate, or the 90s Spider-Man show, unless they're like somewhere in there. I didn't watch the right video with the trivia bits and stuff. But this is just sort of like, I think there's been bad movies that are not like as funny to talk about and see the stars not giving a shit and stuff. Like this is like a little more fun to make fun of and a little more of a set in the sights of everyone than a lot of these have been. So I think it's like a little more fun. And it does feel like something you could like talk about all its bad decisions, where the other ones is like there's too many and you have to get into specifics and you're like whatever. It's a pretty bad comic book movie. It does feel like maybe this is the end of the superhero fatigue era, is ending with this, because this is like almost how people view superhero movies. Very studio controlled, not much of a voice, and doing a character who no one really knows but everyone claims they know tons about and grew up with and it was their favorite and stuff. Just don't see why people want to defend this pile of crap. Like, it's just like, guess what? Sometimes you make something and sometimes it sucks. I'm sure S.J. Clarkson will be fine. I don't necessarily, actually looking through TVography and filmography, necessarily get it as much as I did before. I sort of just accepted, like, oh, people seem to like her, I guess. Okay, cool. Now I'm like, what was their deal? And I don't think she showed enough personality. And you could say, oh, well, Sony wouldn't let her. I'm like, okay, but still is directed a lot of crap. And I mean, that's the problem. That's how people become marketable in Hollywood. It's like they make good product and people want to watch it. And I don't think anyone really wants to watch Madam Web. I mean, I don't really see what the purpose was ultimately. Even the idea of seeing like Sydney Sweeney in a Spider-Man costume is not even there in this movie. Like, you can't even meet me at that stupid dude level, basically. I don't think women will be particularly into it. I don't think the studio had an idea for this. I know they've been thinking of Madam Web for a long time. Then you watch them like, well, what was your theory behind it other than Spider-Man villain make money good? Like, there just doesn't seem to be one. And it played like all of those old like Batman and Robin and Steel and the bad comic book movies of the 90s, where it's like, we have this property, we got to do something with it because of the market share and these people, and these kind of people come out and they normally don't. I felt like they were thinking more about that than making a movie that people want to watch in 5-10 years. Like, and I know a lot of people might try and fail, but this very much felt like, you know, a filler episode kind of backdoor pilot type of thing for something we probably won't get. I don't see how you can watch Madam Web and not be disappointed by it, because there's no way, you know, maybe it's not just all S.J. Clarkson's fault. Then you look at the rest of her work and it's like, I mean, maybe we kind of went a little too far about overrating her a bit, and you know, maybe we went too far thinking this could be a movie. Maybe, you know, the idea of people fighting their, you know, having different visions and fighting for which one is probably the most accurate, and, you know, this idea that like all these women are going to kill him for what purpose, like it really just gets lost in its own stupid nonsense. It's like walk through the fart cloud of its own creation and wondering why it stinks so bad when you're like, dude, whoever smelt it dealt it. And it kind of feels like nobody really cares. Like, the studio is cynical enough to think this might work, but everyone else is just like, oh, a gig they can either get a good paycheck on or what they get offered or whatever. And it's like, I get that's the business and stuff like that, but this just feels so much like someone just trying to fill into something to get in everyone's good graces or get shown box office wise, you know, what they need to or something like that, and not really caring and almost knowing like this is a total disaster. Like, the direction, just like from the Amazon people to like the ending to like, it just feels very insert here in what you're supposed to do, and it didn't make me have a lot of faith in Sony as a place for creative people. Didn't feel great about S.J. Clarkson. It's like, okay, well, if this is like what you can do with the studio thing, it feels like you're a complete pushover and you can't do very much of anything. Like, I don't really understand why we're like sticking up for this one, because it's like the Madam Web movie. Like, come on. Like, it's like, at its best, it doesn't want to be there. It's not like that's the thematic vibe. It was nice when 2003 came on, Garage Rock played, so I guess that's how we view 2003. Not like a ton of Nelly and 50 Cent, but Garage Rock, so cool for them. I just don't view this as anything more a studio kind of disaster that a director didn't care enough to make anything more with. It's like, that's the thing. There's so many directors or stars who, like, even if it's half, it's like an okay movie. They kind of will it into being something, and it just felt like nobody had the energy to will this into anything at all, and the script wasn't going to get it there anyway. So you just watch a lot of people have the money and the time and the studio prospects and everything to possibly do something interesting, and them not caring enough to do anything more than the bare minimum. And this is sort of like the crap they did at work this day. It's like, we didn't need a movie of Madam Web. The egotism to think that this could be anything more, she's just not anyone I remember even having a comic book of. She was just a minor character, and you didn't give us a reason for this movie to exist. Even in the dumb movie way, you didn't give us a reason for this movie to exist. It's just like kind of a failure that will sort of, be a joke for a little bit, but kind of whiffed away, and someone will remind you, oh, they made a Madam Web movie, and you almost want to, sort of roll your eyes and like, oh yeah, that thing. I hope one day Sony will have a little more fun with these and like mess around, but this just felt like it needed to be all a part of whatever Spider-Man connected universe spunk thing exists. Probably see in the future that this would just be, a stink of a movie that we're going to all just like float away rather than wash ourselves off from, because we know another studio will see a successful superhero thing and try it again. I just hope they pick something a little more interesting, a little more thought-provoking, a little more odd, because with Madam Web, you kind of just like hoping its banality and its sort of failure that we've seen so many times with comic book movies becomes something interesting, and it almost, in a sense, fights itself from being even an interesting bad movie. In the end, this thing just fucking stinks, and this movie is not trying to fight it at all. So if you've seen Madam Web and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.